Hey everybody, it's Christine Garvin and welcome to Hormonally Speaking. Glad that you are here today with us. And as always, I have an amazing guest on tap. And this woman, it's really cool to have her on because I've known her personally for a little while now. And we've actually seen each other through some ups and downs over the past couple of years. And she's really leading the way in this sacredness for women that I think is not being talked about enough. And so I'm really excited to dive in with her today on that topic. Her name is Sarah Poet, and she helps women to remember the sacred truth that lies within them, the truths we often spend many years looking for outside of ourselves. Sarah is the host of the Sacred Remembering podcast for modern women waking up to the truth of who they are, which includes leading conversations on modern feminine leadership through our grounded awakenings. Sarah is the founder and creator of Embodied Breath, where she is a presence-based teacher, healer, mentor, and coach for women and conscious couples building sacred relationships. What makes Sarah unique is that she doesn't bypass the difficult stuff on the way to awakening, rather that we need to go through it all. Sarah's also an expert on the feminine and masculine archetypes and how to heal and balance them within all bodies and relationships. And you can check out her TEDx talk, which I will put in the notes, so you can click on over to that. And we'll probably chat about that a little bit today too. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi, Christine. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad that
This was
you're
really fun.
here. Yeah.
Yes.
So, this is we're in the time of absolute chaos in the world right now, right? And it's hard for a lot of people, right? But
Yes.
at the same time, there's this opportunity. And so I, really wanted you to come on here to talk about this area that I feel like in terms of hormonal health, because obviously that's what this podcast is all about, that we don't dip into enough, or talk about enough. And as I mentioned to you before we got started, I even feel weird kind of tapping into that area with my clients sometimes because I never know how people are going to sort of handle the,
The
the spirit.
sacred, the
Yeah, the
sacred
sacred.
conversation. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
can you talk a little bit about that and, what you see is happening?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So I look at the sacred archetypes, the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we don't really know about until we know about it, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so right now, we live in a culture that's over masculinized in how we behave. So,
Mm-hmm.
because the culture is a patriarchy, which I know is a word that rubs
Loaded.
some people, it's
Yeah.
loaded.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm like, it just kind of is, it doesn't have to be loaded. It's, a social structure where power and authority default to men. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what it means. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we've been living in for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So in that structure, over time, as women have, gained more liberation and gained more power and presence in the workplace and things like that, we have had to adopt masculine qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So, within every human body, regardless of gender, regardless of how anyone identifies, there's feminine and masculine energy
Mm-hmm.
and qualities. This is what my TEDx is on.
Mm.
And so, when we rely on the masculine because that's what's required to succeed,
Mm-hmm.
it's like go climb career ladders, work really hard, be superhuman, like
Mm-hmm.
have these babies and breastfeed them and pump while you're working hard at work. Like
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
And we know that that is a recipe for a lot of exhaustion.
Yeah.
But what I like to do is bring consciousness to the fact that, well, we're not balanced in our sacred archetypes, our sacred
Mm.
masculine and feminine, if we're
Mm-hmm.
living like that. Because
Mm-hmm.
and that's the default. Like no shame in that
Mm-hmm.
because we're kind of all doing it.
Right.
So, what's happened with this COVID-19 is essentially a pause button got pushed on the patriarchy. You know,
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
like
Right. It's like
everything
it's
has stopped.
inhibited us doing all the things that we normally do and
Yeah,
buy all the things that we normally buy
right,
and yeah, push,
right.
push, push, yeah.
the perpetual motion. So the
Mhm.
perpetual motion has been paused.
Mhm.
And so I work with women and couples, and I'm in close conversation with many conscious women.
Mhm.
And what we're discovering is like, oh my gosh, in this space of this pause, some discomfort arises.
Mhm.
Like there's this habitual go, go, go. And now
Yep.
I can't be in that habitual go,
Right.
go,
And it's like,
go.
who am I if I'm
Who am I?
not
Yeah.
in the go, 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 right? Because that
Yeah.
really comes up. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And so the nervous system is still like addicted to the adrenaline, addicted to going and doing because that's what we know how to do. You know,
Mhm.
I work from home and have for 2 years. I'm the mother of an 11-year-old son. I just kind of like to paint this picture.
Mhm.
So I was a school principal who totally climbed the career ladder, had an amazing resume, and then I walked away from it in search of this, you know, soul truth.
Mhm. Mhm.
And really talking to women about owning the truth of who we are,
Mm.
and you know what causes us to perpetually strive and feel like we're not enough and those kinds of things. Well, once you leave the career, it's not necessarily like you automatically stop that,
Right.
so you
That's for sure.
know. It's
When
in
you
our
start
system.
running your own business, yeah. It's
Yeah,
yeah.
you go right back into it. So
Mhm.
there was a lot of hustle, a lot of striving. You know, I've been doing this on my own, like without a partner or without
Mhm.
financial support from you know, elsewhere. And so there's a lot of like you go into hustle mode. You just
Mhm.
naturally like
Mhm.
that's
You're
what
like, what am
we
I
do.
gonna do other than hustle?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think we're all learning how to incorporate these qualities of the feminine
Mhm.
that we desire. You know, we desire rest, we desire
Mhm.
the pause, we desire the even the sensuality
Mhm.
of the feminine and this like softness of the feminine, but we're not accustomed to it.
Mhm.
And so we can talk about that without a sacred or spiritual conversation.
Yeah.
And
And that really relates in a lot of ways to, the work that I do with women from that kind of
yeah,
physical perspective, right? Of adrenals is one of the big things that we tap into, right? Because every woman pretty much has adrenal dysfunction on some level because of this hustle that we've been in, right?
yeah, right.
And there is no way to regulate your sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA. None of those can be regulated without taking care of your adrenals,
Right, right.
and it's so interesting, right? Because our uh, kind of epicenter of taking care of our hormones and telling our hormones what to do is in our brain, right? And so it's our
Mm,
pituitary is telling, our adrenals to release cortisol, and it's telling our ovaries to release, estrogen and progesterone and everything. But when we're in this constant fight or flight mode, it's focused on the adrenals saying, pump out this cortisol, because we have to, our bodies know we have to survive.
mm-hmm,
That's more important than getting pregnant, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We'll save getting pregnant for when, things are fine and calm and we can take care of that. Right now, we got to keep you surviving. And
Yeah,
that's at the base of what is, impacting so many women's total health. And that's why I think this is
right.
so important to talk about, because people don't always really make that connection.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm loving this
Hmm.
conversation. Yeah. Yeah. So we often, when we realize that something's been missing,
Hmm.
you know, so I was a school principal. I'll just tell a little story.
Yes, please do.
I was a school principal and I was in my early 30s. Like I
Hmm.
had done a lot by the time I was in my early 30s. And that was a result of a major trauma because I got pregnant following the sensuality, following the sacred
Mm-hmm.
at 19, I got pregnant. And the message to me was this baby needs to be adopted because you haven't gotten married yet, made
Hmm.
enough money yet, had enough education yet,
Hmm.
and like hadn't made something of yourself. And so that internalized in my system as this not enough message.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into striving mode from the time I was 19. I was like,
Wow.
okay, if I'm not worthy of this big, beautiful baby,
Right. You got to
then
prove yourself.
I'm going to prove it, damn
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
I got one degree, and then I immediately went back and got a master's in special
Wow.
education. And I was always like following the sacred path though too, because I was
Hmm.
like, what lights up my heart? And I went back to school and got all these degrees, but for example, my master's was in like social and emotional support. So it was like this
Right. It's
heart-based work.
touchy-feely.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And then I was working in schools and I was like, damn it, I can run this better than these people can. So I went
Yeah.
back and got another master's
Hmm.
in school leadership. And then I started working as a school administrator. Well,
Hmm.
I
Which
also had
takes the heart out of everything.
well, I know I was like in charge of state testing, which is totally
Right, right.
contradictory to me.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's how I knew I was off my path.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, but no, did good work. But
Hmm.
yeah, like I wanted to shape things. And I did things like school wide mindfulness and school wide character development. And I designed a holistic school. And so, the heart was always there.
Hmm.
And I thought I had to keep going on that career ladder. So I had had a second child in my late 20s,
Hmm.
ended up getting married. Yeah, was with that partner for a very long time, like all my
Right.
20s, like we were doing the thing
Hmm.
and we got married. And the choice to get my second master's was really like, well, I was telling myself like, well, he's not going to do it.
Mm.
And we have this family
Ooh.
now and somebody, so I was in
You're
my
like,
mat for it.
you had to take over.
I
Hmm.
was like, and that's the story I was telling myself, like whether that was true or not,
Hmm.
I was not in my soft feminine. I was
Hmm.
like, I'm gonna slay.
Hmm.
Right? Like
Right.
that's what
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna do it if no one else is. And I
Yep.
know a lot of women resonate
Yeah.
with that. Like
Well,
I have to take care of it.
yeah, and you look at, I mean, just to add on to that, just I feel like we're kind of raised in that way to a certain extent, but now we have social media that
Yeah.
literally says those things like slay,
Right.
slay this and like hustle and all of that. I mean, that's been so
Yeah.
amped up
Right.
particularly the past 2 or 3 years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So here I was like had the beautiful second baby that I could raise, and was like in school for a second master's while he was a toddler and got this coveted position here where we live in Asheville, like running
Mm-hmm.
a beautiful charter school
Mm-hmm.
or like helping to run.
Mm-hmm.
And my adrenals were crashing.
Oh, I
And
bet.
then I decided to leave my marriage. Like, so
Mm.
all of this stress, all of this was happening. And I was quite literally laying on the floor in my office. I tell the story in the TEDx.
Mm-hmm.
I was laying on the floor in my office, like trying to regulate my adrenals, like trying to find
Mm.
that bit of rest.
Mm-hmm.
My Ayurvedic doctor told me to put my feet up a couple times a day. So I
Mm-hmm.
would close the door, put my feet up,
Mm-hmm.
and then like get back up and do what needed to be done and
Mm-hmm.
like taking care of the child and working again at home at night. And that was, yeah, I had extreme adrenal fatigue
Yeah.
by the age of 32.
Yeah.
And I was even seeing an osteopath and she couldn't figure out what was wrong with me,
Mhm.
just like
Mhm.
extremely depleted. Went to an endocrinologist and like went through the
Yeah.
testing, but didn't, acupuncture and
Yeah.
following the advice of my acupuncturist was the best thing. But
Right.
then the rest, like learning this rest. And so while that adrenal thing was happening,
Mhm.
I was remembering that there was this truth inside of me that I had covered up a long ass time ago when I had
Mm.
that big trauma.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Because, like the person that I was when I was this carefree teenager that got pregnant, like that woman was alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I became, less than alive, right? In
Right.
the hustle.
Right.
And the other thing I was remembering was that there was this thing called the feminine.
Mm.
And I would be in administrative meetings and I would be like, I really just have this gut feeling. And, like I'm smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
You're
had
like,
a
I
lot
can
of
be both.
experience.
Yeah.
Exactly. I had a lot of experience with, children with disabilities and things like that. And I would be in meetings and I would say, this is my gut hunch about what this child needs.
Mm.
And the women that I worked for, it wasn't men. When I tell this story, people assume it was men.
Mhm.
my female boss was like, Sarah, you take intuitive leaps. I
Mm.
can't, it was like dismissing
Mm-hmm.
the feminine, like
Right.
the intuition.
Right.
And so I just started to like ask, well, what does this mean? What is the feminine?
Right.
What is this? Why do we deny it?
Right, right. And what's interesting, just to interject really quick, if you read sort of books or see talks from really famous people, right, that are really successful in their businesses,
Yeah.
they almost always point to intuition being a huge part of what got them there,
Yes.
right? And
Right.
so it
Right.
is fascinating that women, I think we think, because we've been taught in this male world that
Yeah.
we're not supposed to, especially don't talk about intuition and making decisions based off of intuition, right? Even though the reality is the most successful people credit that with being a huge part of their success.
Yeah. Right. But our institutions, I think, know that less. Like
Yeah.
entrepreneurs know that,
Yeah.
innovators
Mm-hmm.
know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working in innovative schools, and
Right.
we were still shunning what are inherently feminine aspects because a patriarchy has been built to honor masculine aspects,
Mm-hmm.
but not even actualized masculine aspects, not
Right.
even the best
The good
forms of
stuff.
the masculine.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because if you cut off the feminine, then you cut off the best aspects of the masculine as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
it can't thrive that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, getting maybe coming back around to right now, we've been maintaining some wounded aspects of a masculinized culture,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and now there's a pause, and there are a lot of choice points. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, well, am I going to try like hell to keep this system going,
Mm-hmm.
or am I going to admit, like, let's talk about women and women's bodies, am I going to admit that I have been overdoing it and I'm dissatisfied, and there's a truth inside of me that I have been suppressing?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the sacred remembering piece that I do
Mm-hmm.
with women. It's like remembering the truths that are inside of you
Mm-hmm.
and letting yourself have them,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is work. Like, it is courageous and
Yeah.
it takes time, but it goes hand in hand with what you're talking about with hormones,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, I think the longer we stay disconnected from the truth of who we are, the longer we are in that fight or flight. We're trying to protect
Absolutely.
something that isn't real.
Yep.
And so, it is a long walk. It is like a journey,
Yeah.
to come
Well,
back to these places.
and the reality is, all the work that I do with women is a journey too, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing about this work, your work, my work,
Yeah.
that I want women to understand is, like, you're kind of signing up for the long run, right? Or the long
Yeah.
haul, like,
Right.
because there's so many different layers to it.
Yeah.
There's so much of remembering that has to be done. There's so
Yeah.
much of allowing your body to
Allowing.
come back to a homeostasis that it
Yeah.
wants to be at. But
Yeah.
it, like you said, like, even right now, we're still like jacked up, even though things have slowed down, right?
Right.
And it
Right.
takes time for our systems to unwind, and for things to work out, and
Yeah.
because we've teetered over to one side to some extent, patience is a huge thing, and patience and dedication to this work,
Right.
right? And
Right. Right.
allowing that there's going to be some ups and downs with it too, I think is
Right.
something that I know we all want that pill, right? We all want that pill, like, take the pill, I'm going to feel better. But that's not the reality of our journeys.
Right. It's not like you're taking a pill to just automatically create some rebalance, because
Right.
the imbalance is cultural.
Mm-hmm.
And when we walk back to the truth of ourselves or walk back to our hormonal health, they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
We are courageously kind of going outside of that system and saying,
Yep.
this isn't working anymore.
Yep.
And what I want to talk about too, Christine, is like doing versus being, and a healthy
Mm-hmm.
masculine in women.
Mm. Sounds
if we
good.
can go
Well,
there. Okay.
yeah, can I
Yeah.
ask you one quick thing before we
Yeah.
dive into
Yeah.
that? Because it was an image that came up in my head as you were talking before. I'm curious, like, in terms of the virus, in terms of COVID-19, if there's anything going around talking about that being sort of like like a Kali, or,
Mm,
a very strong sort of feminine warrior coming through to kind of help
mm,
balance things out, because it's
mm.
like we weren't, as a society, and I mean not just America, but like all over the world, we weren't heeding the calls of the sort of the feminine timeline in a
Yeah.
really good way, right? And so
Yeah.
I had this image of like the virus is like, all right, well, you guys haven't been listening, and it kind of coming through and creating that, and almost like that's the first time I've thought about, like, could that
Mm,
actually be that sort of like warrior feminine
mm.
coming through in order to
Yeah.
like lay the groundwork for what we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so you want my opinion on what's going on behind the scenes
Yeah.
cosmically?
Yep,
Okay.
pretty much.
Okay.
That's exactly what I want.
Because that's a bigger, yeah, I
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
all right. All right.
If you're down to do it, to
I'm
tell us.
down. I'm
All right.
so down.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to say, if you're new to this conversation, like, just thanks for being here,
Yeah.
and then and then there is like, I look behind the scenes and I
Yeah.
study soul, and I actually study the archetypal feminine and masculine, like, on the planet
Mhm.
and the way it's moving on the planet.
Mhm.
And so and having to own that on my journey was like a big part of me as a woman saying, actually, I got more than intuition, folks.
Mhm. Right,
Like,
right. You're like, there's a
I
whole thing going on over here.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, so now there's that part of me coming
Yeah.
out. So we've been existing in what I'll say, I'll use some words that just to kind of get the points across, not
Mhm.
that they really truly resonate with me, but we've been existing in like a lower vibrational or
Mhm.
lower dimensional frequency.
Mhm.
Some call that like the 3D, the third
Mhm.
dimension. So it's the
Mhm.
dimension that we can see. And that's the dimension that patriarchy has thrived in.
Mhm.
And that has been built on separation. So this
Mhm.
is really important for women and women's bodies, because we have been told, trained, indoctrinated, just like it was normal for us to be individualists,
Mhm.
like go out and make something of yourself, like on your own, like you're going
Mhm.
to prove it on your own, right?
Oof, yes.
Yep, me
Yep.
too. That's a whole system of separation.
Mhm.
So in that system, you are competing for resources, competing for money, recognition, love. Like, it's all built in competition and
Mhm.
separation.
Mhm.
And that's some of the untruth. That's like a big old lie, because we
Yeah.
know that love is the only truth, right?
Yeah.
So the whole world, and if you follow astrology, like the entry into the Aquarian age,
Mhm.
the whole world is in a time of feminine and masculine rebalance.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the sacred feminine is like here.
Yeah.
And thank you for letting me talk about this.
Yeah, no, I mean,
The
you can't not talk about it,
Okay,
right?
all right.
With what you
Yeah.
do.
So the sacred feminine is here
Mhm.
and available.
Mhm.
And where's she going to go? She's going to go into women's bodies,
Mm.
because women have been, open to the emotionality. We're more open to the self work. We're more open to the healing and the spiritual awakenings in my assessment. Like,
Mhm.
and the feminine is going to just naturally find a home in women's bodies
Mhm.
first, and then
Mhm.
there's a whole cascade of events that happens after that. So what I see this time as is an opportunity for the sacred feminine to really land in women's bodies. And women
Mm.
individually do this when they accept that this isn't working anymore, and I want my nervous system and I want my adrenals to heal.
Mhm.
So that's how we do it, right? Like,
Mhm.
whether or not you're like, I'm here for the sacred feminine on the planet, or you're like, I just want to feel better and have this adrenal fatigue away, like, you're doing the same work.
Right, right.
So what happens after the sacred feminine is anchored on the planet, is recognized, and I do think that this is what is happening right now,
Mm-hmm.
is that there is a move toward unity consciousness. So, what I was going to talk about, the healthy masculinity in
Mm-hmm.
women,
Mm-hmm.
once we reclaim the feminine, we don't just abandon the
Right.
masculine. Like,
Right.
we love the masculine. I
Yeah.
love the sacred masculine. For
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
long time, I was like anti masculine because I was like, that took a lot from me.
Yeah.
And, there's all this like oppression that comes from men and male bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're working that out in our psyches and our hearts and souls.
Mm-hmm.
And on that journey, we find that the feminine really knows how to be in the heart. And
Mm.
so, heart consciousness
Mm.
is landing on the planet right
Yeah.
now.
Okay, so
So,
I
if
just
you
have to
know
tell you
that,
really quick
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because it's the timing is so amazing to me. But heart, like the heart stuff for me personally, that's been coming up like in my therapy. I go
yeah,
to a kind of more woo woo therapy where
yeah,
we dip into muscle testing and we dip into like chakra stuff and clearing through the chakras. But like literally, like all of my trauma, and going back
yeah,
to what you were talking about earlier, like
yeah,
from this life, from previous lives, like it's residing in my heart, and having
yeah,
to like work with the heart is it right now, like it
right,
is it.
right.
So
And
continue.
we don't want to hold on anymore to what hurts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the feminine, it's like when you surrender to this path of what I call sacred remembering, it's
Mm-hmm.
like you don't want to just like suffer in the trauma every damn
Yeah.
day,
Ugh.
you
Over
know?
it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the antidote to that is love. But
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that on my path for years and years and years
Mm-hmm.
because I was healing trauma. I was healing my body. I was healing
Mm-hmm.
the, I wanted the next thing that was going to make me feel better and give me the answers and solve the problems.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And so, yeah, let me just. So, unity consciousness is the fifth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the whole earth, like the frequency that the planet like vibrates at,
Mm-hmm.
it has
Mm-hmm.
literally been raising,
Mm-hmm.
like the Schumann resonance, like people say
Mm-hmm.
time is speeding up. So, the planet is awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people that are studying the earth and the energetics of the earth or channeling from the earth are
Mm-hmm.
saying like she, because
Mm-hmm.
that's feminine energy, the
Mm-hmm.
earth, it's matter, and feminine, so are our bodies, like
Mm-hmm.
bodies matter is the feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're all collectively saying, I just got chills, like our bodies and the earth body is saying no more,
Yeah.
like it's not working.
Yeah.
And so I can't say, I don't know if it's like Kali, that's,
Right.
I don't think so. I think it's something much more cosmically, I think it's much, much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is a very divine choice point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like a warning sign
Mm-hmm.
to all of us to say, how are you going to choose to move forward?
Right. Yeah.
And you see, like my friends that I'm talking to, they're like, I'm with my neighbors and we're planting gardens.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And like people sharing food and people dropping off food for each other. And I mean, we're coming into the heart
Yep.
and we're coming into the earth and we're coming into community.
Yeah.
Even though there's this like social distancing and separation, there's all this love
Oh, yeah.
that's
And
really coming out.
reconnection, I mean, one of the things
Yes.
that I've really enjoyed is reconnecting with old friends that normally you just don't feel like you have the time to do,
Right.
to get in these
Yeah.
conversations. And but it's so interesting because even as you were talking, I was thinking like, love so much of that. And then yet there's this fear still in there of letting go of what has always been, right? Of
Yeah.
having the money in the bank, of, having a quote unquote purpose by
Yeah.
going to our jobs. And so I imagine that if I'm feeling that that's something that's true for a lot of people. So like, do you have a
Right.
particular way that recommend people work with that?
Thanks for asking that.
I just put you on the
Um,
spot.
you did a little bit, and like as you were saying that,
Mhm.
so I went through a very like I went through a dark night of the soul. Like I went through
Mhm.
this uh, you know, deep initiation in
Mhm.
2019
Mhm.
where it was oh, I love yeah, I love that we already have some backstory because this will make sense now. So what I had not dealt with at 19 and 20
Mhm.
and that hustle mode,
Mhm.
there was like a significant event in at the end of 2018 where I realized those parts of myself that were still active.
Mm.
And it was like a very difficult letting go. And there was a lot of
Mhm.
sadness of how I had spent 2 decades like
Mhm.
running my life. And then there
Right.
was a rebuilding. So I feel really like my heart's wide open right now because on a personal level,
Mhm.
I went through the crash. Like the
Right.
whole world is experiencing this coming apart right now.
Right.
And I've gone through that. Like it's
Yeah.
the darkness
Yeah.
that then leads to the truth of who you are, the solutions, the creativity. You
Mhm.
know, you lose things and you realize you're not going to die for it.
Mhm.
You come into what you want to create,
Yeah.
what you will and will not do anymore.
Yeah.
And I just see that as our massive opportunity right
Yeah.
now.
And I mean, that is such a, important point that you have to go through it. Um, you can't jump around it. You can't go to the side of it. You can't, even necessarily like, I mean, I love lots of tools to help you in the process, but
Right,
the
right,
truth
right.
is you have to have that dark night of the soul in order
Yeah.
to get to the light, right? And
For any real
yeah,
rebirth,
yep,
there's a darkness.
yep, yep.
Like the seed goes into the soil
Mhm,
first and it's
mhm.
uncomfortable and then has to burst open. Like the baby lives in the darkness first,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And we have to, have cultivate patience around the timeline of these things, right?
Yeah,
Because the reality is you don't know exactly when the light is going to be here. You
right.
don't, but what you think is going to be the light will change as you go through this process, right? Just like you were talking about,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
went through this, in the 2018 and all of 2019, that created you're a different person, or I don't want to say you're a different person. You've come back to more of who you are.
Yes.
So all of this
Right.
impacts you very differently than it
Well,
would have beforehand.
yeah. So I say that to say, like, we will get through it.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
will not all be pretty.
Right.
And if this is a choice point, like if you are a woman listening to this conversation and you've gotten this far on this
Yeah.
conversation and you know that there's something that you've been denying and you're like, am I going to say yes to myself or am I
Mhm.
going to stay in? And I'm saying like, this is the time of the
Mhm.
awakening. Like this is
Mhm.
the opportunity to
Mhm.
get real and just kind of like let yourself break open a little bit and maybe
Mhm.
be a little messy and
Mhm.
embrace these like feminine and masculine parts. And so but your question originally was, do I have recommendations for what to do
Mhm.
when that
Mhm.
feels overwhelming?
Mhm.
And, you know, breathe.
Mhm. Yeah.
We know how regulating the breath is.
Yeah.
So I'm not even kidding. Like, rest when you're tired
Yep.
because the energetics of this thing, and I'm talking about like the unity consciousness thing, the feminine masculine
Mhm.
rebalancing thing, is really calling on a lot of rest in women.
Mhm.
And the women clients that I have right now who are professional women who have been on a path of awakening, but now they're working from home and balancing home life with homeschooling and
Yeah.
working from home. The nervous system in these women is going, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
I
Yeah.
had it figured out. I had my Like I knew when to put on my mom hat. I knew when to put
Mhm.
on um, my worker hat. I
Mhm.
knew, like, we have segmented ourselves as women a little bit or a lot, where like, okay, now it's bath time. Now I get self-care. And
Mhm.
right now, integration is really
Mm.
a potential.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
going back to the basics, like, can you find the end of your exhale?
Mm.
Can you find the end of your exhale? Can you let yourself sit on the couch and read the book with your child or beside your child? My child doesn't
Mhm.
want me to read to him anymore, but like we read
Mm.
together. You know,
Mhm.
it's like when your body is pulling you down
Yeah.
and saying too much,
Yep.
can you listen
Yeah. And be in that present moment.
and be in the present moment?
Mhm.
Find the end of the exhale and let the end of the exhale lead to the next inhale
Mhm.
and then lead to the next exhale. Like just find that. Find the still points if you can.
It's like the
And
simplest and hardest thing in the world to do, right?
yes,
And I mean, it's what I talk to my clients about all the time, getting some kind of breath work practice and some kind of meditation or visualization, and whatever that looks like for you, like if you need to carve out the 5 minutes a day and that's all you can do, that's great.
it's great because it's habit forming.
Exactly. And then you start to
Yeah,
feel those differences even from 5 minutes a day, and then bringing it into present moment like you're talking about,
right.
that, I mean, the breath, like I've been focusing a lot lately on the breath and then the vagus nerve,
Yeah,
which I think, oversees so much of this too.
yeah,
And I love that the things that you do to stimulate the vagus nerve are very like primal in some ways, right? It's like
mm-hmm.
gargling or like saying om,
Mm,
exactly,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and it just feels like this deep coming in to your
yeah.
body that you do, and that is actually what calms our bodies more than anything else.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much. So I feel like we're winding down, but I do want to mention one more
Mhm.
thing for women who may be coming into working from home now for the first time or
Mhm.
really juggling a lot of things. And yeah, it started to drop in earlier this year, and it's actually going to become a program that I offer. It's kind of
Mhm.
like a relationship with time and energy, like really,
Mm.
really overhauling our relationship with time and our energy. And I call it structure and flow. And so there are a
Mm.
lot
I
of
like
like
it.
details. Yeah. So the masculine provides a lot for us. Like
Mhm.
that masculine within me got me through school 3 times.
Mhm.
It, like, with the waitressing in the evenings,
Mhm.
that masculine in me like knew how to run schools.
Right.
The masculine knows how to manage money. Like these are
Right.
the energetics, right? These are our masculine parts.
Right.
So, a lot of women, when discovering that the reclaiming of the feminine is necessary, the reclaiming of this
Mhm.
rest is necessary, we either start to reject the masculine or just unconsciously start to value the feminine more
Mhm.
and like get we can get really loose in our structure, like we can
Mhm.
sort of abandon
Right.
that, like for this remembering. And
Right.
so the structure and flow is really, at the beginning of the day, do your meditation, get your information about what's important in the day,
Mhm.
create a structure for your day. Like, what
Mhm.
are your just like top three to dos? Like, not
Yeah.
10 to dos, just like top three.
Yep.
And where do you have to be? And then flow within that.
Mm.
So working from home for me is like I have a hormonal spike at like 2 o'clock.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like 2 o'clock, I want to like cuddle and read a book.
Mhm.
That's what's
Yeah.
going on at two
Yep.
o'clock. 8 o'clock in the morning, I
Mhm.
can be like on the emails, I can be
Yep.
creating, I can be writing. So going with whatever your hormones are
Yep.
telling
Yep.
you
Your
in
own
that
cycle. Yep.
cycle of the
Mhm.
day, right?
Mhm.
And that requires flow. That's the feminine.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
honor your structure,
Yeah.
get it done,
Yeah.
but get it done when you feel the peak.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up because I mean, I feel like I struggle with this all the time, and creating boundaries kind of around the flow in some ways too, right? That's the structure that you're talking about,
Yeah.
because I can get caught up in, just like working on something way too long, right?
Right.
Once I start
Right.
in it, because I'm like, I got to go with, and sometimes that's okay, but a lot of times that can be depleting, right?
Right.
And like when I push through that 3 o'clock when I need a break,
Yeah, no pushing through.
Right,
Right.
right,
Push
exactly.
through is wounded masculine.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. But it's like
Mhm.
if you don't have any structure, and some people are seeing that right now with, being at home when
Yeah.
they haven't been before, and trying to, juggle, they're just like, you don't really kind of get anywhere without some kind of structure in your day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then some shadow elements can come in, like avoidance. If there's a
Yes.
big thing that you need to do and you're avoiding it, you
Yep.
could work on that preferred project
Yeah.
for a really long time. And then the masculine is the part of you that's like, no, here are your top priorities for the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
This is what you need to do. It's like holding yourself accountable.
Yeah.
But I just see it in this feminine and masculine. And when they dance, then you have harmony,
Right.
then
Right.
you have love, like you have ease, you have this heart
Right.
space,
Right.
you're like, oh, I don't have
Yeah.
to do all things. I'm just like balancing my life. And while there's no magic pill,
Yeah.
there is every day gradual improvement in an
Hmm.
intentional life,
Yeah. And that's why
you
I'm really
know?
glad that you just kind of painted that picture for us, because I think sometimes people don't really understand, well, what is bridging masculine and feminine within me, and how does that look in my life? So I
Yeah.
like this, structure and flow idea, because
Yeah.
that really is like, okay, I can see, and equating it to our cycle, because with women, who are still cycling, but even if you're done with cycling in your life, or you
Yeah.
don't have a cycle, you can follow the moon,
Uh-huh.
and it really, there's these times of the month where we're much more sort of
Oh yeah.
productive, in that productive place, and then times that
Mm-hmm.
we maybe, really just need to like chill out a lot. And for a lot of women,
Mm-hmm.
that's when they're on their
Mm-hmm.
period. It's funny for
Yes.
me, I actually am kind of the opposite, to where for some reason the first couple of days of my period now, which didn't used to be this way, I have a lot of energy. And so I always
Oh,
tell people to
interesting.
honor that too, like
Yeah.
track your own cycle, and
Right.
then,
Honor your energy.
yeah,
Mm.
and then, don't, I mean, I have for so many years, it doesn't matter what I do, like I am, need some winding down at 3 p.m. I need to
Mm.
meditate, I need to do
Mm.
something then. And, it, even in my training, there's so much of like, well, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this to get over that hump? Da, 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 da,
Mm-mm.
and then finally I came to the place where I'm like, that's just my circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And let me just honor that, and so
Right.
it's okay,
Right. Yeah.
doesn't matter what anybody else says about it.
Absolutely. And I really want to empower women too, kind of going one more step further,
Mhm.
to honor this with their partners and like begin to
Mhm.
speak this with their partners. So
So
the
important.
week that I have my period,
Mhm.
I am slower in
Mhm.
business, but I also am not having sex.
Mhm.
Like I'm like my body is resting and
Yeah.
recuperating, and that is the time where I'm most intuitive,
Mhm.
most connected to the
Mhm.
sacred.
Mhm.
I'm like in nature a lot more that
Mhm.
week, so my business flows with that. And then also, back to speaking to the partner,
Mhm.
like I have a male partner,
Mhm.
and men don't have these rhythms like we have
Right.
these rhythms.
Right.
Like they're like sex, yes, any
Yes.
time of day, right?
Right.
And so, I'm like, if you want to have the best sex with me ever,
Mhm.
2 p.m.
Yeah.
Like that's what's happening in my body, right? And like, if you want me like kind of there,
Yeah.
we can do that at bedtime,
Right, right.
you know?
You're like, "That's when I'm
Uh,
kinda nodding off,"
I
but
know, I
yeah.
know.
Uh,
So he's kind of like, oh, there are cycles,
yeah.
He's like
Yep.
coming, yeah. So educating your men, it
That's
does,
I
it
love
doesn't have
that.
to be the default that you're just like available all the time,
Right.
or to do or to be or to give, like
Yeah.
in this
I
default way that we do as women.
Right. That's so important. That's such an important point that I'm glad that you brought up. And particularly now in our, general pause in the world, it's like you do have, not everybody has obviously all of the space and time to do
Right.
that. And, having kids at home, and being in separate, places, isolating and all of that. But at least it gives you a chance to really tune into and get honest with
Exactly.
yourself about what your cycles are, and then be able to
Yeah.
be honest with your partner. Yeah. Love
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's like it's some of that personal truth, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
this is a good time for me or this is not a good time for me.
Mhm.
And honoring those body cycles and the wisdom of your hormones
Yeah.
in partnership, and then like that teaches the men to honor that as well.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, I
Yeah.
love it. So tell people where they can get in contact with you.
Awesome. My name is Sarah Poet, and my website is sarahpoet.com,
Mhm.
SARAHPOET.
Mhm.
And you can pretty much find everything there. So I have a podcast called Sacred Remembering. It's also on
Mhm.
iTunes and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Mhm.
And that's for modern women waking up to the truth of who they are. That's what I
Love
call
it.
it.
Yep, love it.
Yeah. And I do a biannual women's mastermind that's a really soulful deep dive into some of these topics and really
Mhm.
attuning to our sacred truth as
Mm.
women. Like,
Mhm.
we're in it right now, and
Yep.
being in that with this COVID thing, we're like, are we going to stand in our truth? Are
Right.
we going to walk more toward our truth,
Right.
or are we going to like jump ship? And so it's a really beautiful group alchemy that happens there.
Nice.
And the next one will be coming up probably in July.
Okay.
And so on my website, there's just like a sign up to stay informed. So
Mhm.
if women are interested in that, they can do that.
Nice.
And then I work with women and couples in some of this rebalancing and anything that's associated with that. So
So good, so needed, and so necessary. So thank you for doing this work in the
yeah,
world right now,
yeah.
now more than ever. You're helping to usher people into this next phase that we're going into for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's happening. It's clearly happening,
Yeah.
right? So like
Yep.
let's be conscious. Let's be connected. Let's be connected to ourselves, our truth, the health of our bodies, like
Mhm. Let's do this thing.
the health of our relationships. Yeah, like
Yep.
let's create a new world. Let's
Yep.
create a new world.
Yep. Yep.
Really.
Now is the time, my
Now's
friends.
the time.
All
Yeah.
right,
Thank you
Sarah,
so much,
thanks. Yeah,
Christine.
thanks for being here with us today, and I will see you guys next time.